Hello, this is an introductory video to Summer Session 2 class Murder on Screen and Stage. If you'll notice from the image to our right from the movie The Shining, a classic horror film directed by Stanley Kubrick based on a horror novel by horror master Stephen King, The Shining is a terrifying movie depicting Jack Torrance, who is possessed by some entity in a hotel that instructs him to kill his wife and son. As viewers, we're not really sure what prompts this, making this impending fear all the more terrifying. This connection between fear and horror is underwriting our entire class. I should also let you know that The Shining is one of the texts, it's a movie we'll be watching for this class. Just to prepare you for, if you're afraid of horror movies, this class might not be for you. You may be wondering, who is this disembodied voice speaking to me from the beyond? I'm Professor Paul Narkunis. I'm in the English department. I'm an associate professor, and I've been at John Jay since 2007 after teaching at the Pratt Institute, an art school in Brooklyn, and Princeton University. If you want to find more information out about me, you can look on the John Jay English Department College website. One thing you should note is my email address. As this is an online class, email is the primary ways of communicating with me. So jnarkunis@jj.cuny.edu. It's something that'll be on the syllabus. It'll also be throughout Blackboard. This is an email you really should get to know. Welcome to our class. Now let's get down to business. By now you've hopefully read the course description from the catalog. I have a more specific one outlining the themes that we'll be following over the course of the semester. Our class will explore not only the historical function of murder in numerous political, social, and psychological contexts, but also ask why humans are so fascinated by murder. From ancient Greek tragedies and Shakespeare plays to popular crime shows like CSI, Criminal Minds, and Law and Order, horror films and zombie hordes on TV and screen eating humans to live, murder and its aftermath have haunted humans over the centuries. Why are such horrific subjects so popular still in our contemporary world? This is one of the driving questions of our class. Usually when you think about murder and terrible things, you're supposed to run away from them and not really reflect on them. And yet, murder seems to carry a certain fascination with human beings. Why is that? To begin our response, our class will explore two basic questions surrounding murder. How does death haunt the living, with murder as the connection between them both? How does our individual fear of death, the one thing we will all do besides pay taxes, keep drawing our attention to murder? Our course text will guide our exploration of how murder is tied to the connection between guilt and morality, ethics and the formation of law, how the desire for revenge and human resentment lead to unspeakable horrors, how truth can be murdered through lies. And we'll be focusing on the detective's job, namely the role of the detective, a seeker of truth, whose job is to restore truth. We'll also weigh what the end of the world may actually look like. As we are in the middle of summer blockbuster movie season, where cities, societies, or peoples are regularly reduced to rubble for our viewing pleasure, why is pleasure derived in seeing individuals or societies annihilated? Just have to think about, over the course of the last year, you could have perhaps seen New York, which you may live in or live nearby, reduced to destruction 4 or 5 times. Why is there any pleasure derived in seeing a city that hopefully we all love, or at least care about, destroyed like that? And more importantly, what about the aftermath of all this individual or societal destruction? Why do we never see that on the screen? Part of it is it's tremendously depressing. Moving on, our course is asynchronous. What does this mean? Asynchronous means that our class has no live sessions. Instead, the class is structured with a series of tasks that you'll be able to complete on your own schedule, with the understanding that there are dedicated deadlines that you must meet in order to receive credit. The other thing about asynchronous learning is that it really does create a 24/7 possibility of teaching and learning. So that's just something to keep in mind. You can be working on this at any time. The other element of this class is that it's self-directed. In most face-to-face classes, you have a professor there that's usually trying to keep tabs of your work and trying to kind of keep you motivated. We don't have that luxury here. The closest we're going to come to each other is through this disembodied voice, and perhaps a video. So a lot of the responsibility of completing the work is now going to fall on you. And there is going to be a considerable amount of work. So if you're not really self-directed and committed to working at least a little bit every day, this class might not be for you. Okay, that is to say, this is a packed full class, as all classes are in the summer session. Next, let's go over the text we'll be covering over the course of the semester so you can get a real sense of whether this class will work for you. The first text is a collection of short stories from Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe is a master Gothic writer who's best known for his horror stories like The Telltale Heart, The Black Cat, The Mask of the Red Dead, but is also a figure who helped create the detective story. So all future detective stories from Sherlock Holmes onward owe a debt to Edgar Allan Poe. And we'll be looking at Poe to make a connection between one of our later books, which will also be focusing on the detective story. The next text is a Greek play by Euripides. This is an ancient tragedy from ancient Greece. We'll be focusing on Medea. And this is a tragedy, which means that something terrible happens. All right. In ancient Greek society, the goal of Greek tragedies was simultaneously to entertain the audience, but also to provide instruction or give a lesson. The idea being that if you were entertained when you had a lesson, you might actually follow the lesson instead of resisting it. And Medea has a very kind of provocative lesson, one that asks us to focus on the status of women in ancient Greek society. The story depicts Medea, who basically makes all these sacrifices in order to help her husband Jason get ahead in life and to flee his troubles. And when Jason finds himself in a context where he could potentially marry into a better family, he abandons Medea and his 2 children with her. And so Medea is a woman scorned and left in a horrible situation where she's forced into exile, which at this moment in time is a form of certain death. So the play explores a really provocative question. Why is it that Medea can only have human agency, human subjectivity, through revenge and through committing an act of unspeakable horror? It's a really provocative question that the play poses, and it really does allow us to think about current social issues about gender in our present world, particularly the continuance of a patriarchal society. The next play is by Sophocles. Sophocles is perhaps best known for Oedipus the King. This is the story that Sigmund Freud, for those of you who are interested in psychology, borrowed to help create his idea of the Oedipal complex. We'll be focusing instead on Antigone, which is a play that really allows us to probe the distinction between ethics and search for justice and the law. The play follows Antigone, who's a woman who is trying to bury the remains of one of her relatives against the orders and the rule of law from King Creon. It was basically decreed that anyone who buries these remains will be considered a traitor and will be put to death. Antigone, nevertheless, has a moral obligation, an ethical obligation to fight what she perceives as an unjust law. She's an individual who sees the law as being absolutely unjust. A key element to this is that in ancient Greek society, burial is one of the most important things you could do for your relatives. If your remains were not buried, it was perceived that you would have no capacity for going on to the afterlife. So that's what's kind of the essential point of this. And Sophocles is really asking us, what are the limits of ethics and justice in relationship to the law? And when is it actually just to defy an unjust law? The next text is Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep. Chandler invented what's called the hard-boiled detective novel. This depicts the detective as being this kind of very cool figure. That's why you see the cigarette there, who's able to kind of see things that other people don't, but nevertheless, in the pursuit of truth, has to go encounter the more unseemly side of society. Chandler monumentalized what we would consider to be the taboo or the forbidden, the unseemly side of society, because he thought it was much closer to reality and certain ideal notions of law and morality. And so by engaging this, the detective meets really some unseemly characters. There's issues of madness. There's, of course, murder and mayhem and so forth. And through it all, the detective is able to weed through the lies in order to construct a story of truth in a world that is potentially fallen. Okay? It's just a world that is, so disgusting at some level. The detective has to sort through all of this in order to find the truth. The next text is by Cormac McCarthy, The Road. McCarthy is a fairly famous American writer, best known for No Country for Old Men. But The Road is a very kind of cryptic novel. It's very easy to read. It has very short sentences. And what he's trying to do in this novel is depict a world that has been totally destroyed. That's why the sentences are so short, in fact. The plot of the story is a boy and his father are having survived a terrible event that has destroyed all of civilization. All the forests and the cities have been burned. The electricity no longer exists. There's no access to internet, nothing like that. And there's therefore great scarcity of food. And the weather has dramatically changed because of this event. It's assumed like a kind of nuclear apocalypse. And in the process, they have to move to warmer climates. Because there are no resources, people are eating other people. So they have to flee cannibals and all kinds of people who want to do harm to them. And the book poses a really fundamental question. What remains of humans when all of society has been murdered, when civilization itself no longer exists? And how does one maintain an element of humanity amidst all that? It's a really, really gut-wrenching novel. It's also a page-turner, even though it's not the most pleasant subject. So these are our books, in addition to the movie The Shining. Your tech needs for our class. You'll need to have daily access to Blackboard, yes, including weekends. You also should daily check your Blackboard associated email address. Just really get in the habit in case there's any announcements. Familiarity with uploading papers to Turnitin. If you've never used Turnitin, please familiarize yourself with it. We'll talk about that in a bit. And also, you need to have a Skype account and access to it in the event that you need to communicate with me for any issues with the class. Because I don't have office hours, Skype is the way that we will be communicating. So get ready. We have 15 weeks of material, 5 weeks of class. It's a little scary considering everything. What does this mean? Well, expect 45 to 150 pages of reading per unit. We'll have 8 units over the course of the semester. We'll have around 15 to 45 pages of reading per day. We'll have quizzes every 3 to 4 days, and we'll have a discussion board posting every 3 to 4 days. We'll have 2 essays due at the end of the semester. Okay, this seems like a lot. Are you scared yet? Well, do not. As it says at the gates of hell in Dante's Inferno, abandon all hope, ye who enter here, because you receive a considerable amount of credit for doing the basic work of the class, reading, writing, and discussing the texts. You have considerably less actual reading and writing than you would in a 15-week course. This is a summer session. There's just no way we could cover the same amount of material in what is basically a 4.5-week class. So you're getting off easy compared to a regular semester. The assignments build off each other. For example, the discussion board entries worth 40% of your grade can help you with your essays. Furthermore, the 2 to 3 page essay worth 10% of your final grade is designed to help you complete some of the work for your final research paper, worth 24% of your grade. You will also receive feedback from me on the essay to help you refine your final research paper. So you can see every assignment feeds into the next assignment, and you can borrow from the previous work. So nothing is left on the table here. You will also hopefully find the material and themes interesting, particularly given John Jay Criminal's social justice focus. Our class is delivered via Blackboard, so if you're new to it, you may have some extra work. Let's take a moment to look over some of the basics of Blackboard, a cheat sheet, if you will, of Blackboard for our class. Okay, here we are at our course's homepage on Blackboard. The thing to first draw your attention to is the menu, a series of menu items over here. This is our homepage. This is where you can find announcements. This is where that first announcement I sent to you last week can be found, and each subsequent announcement will also appear here. It'll also be sent to you as an email. This is where basically some further information about me, some of which is also on the John Jay College website. And then this folder, the syllabus folder, is extraordinarily important. Let's go take a look. In this, you will find our course syllabus. This is the most important document at the beginning of the semester. Please go ahead and print out a hard copy of the syllabus for your own uses, so it's something you can readily draw upon. I also ask you to really look through it so closely because it will explain everything you need to know about the class, what the expectations are, how to do certain things, and where to find certain things. In fact, it's so important that I've created our first assignment to be a quiz on it. Now, this quiz is not for any points, but you must complete it in order to continue within the class. Why am I doing this? To really ensure that you're familiar with the syllabus and some of the major requirements and deadlines in order that you can succeed in this class. The other thing to keep in mind is this is where the summer academic calendar is. We have a lot of deadlines that come very quickly because this class is only for 4.5 weeks. So if you're not sure about certain deadlines that you might need, please be sure to consult it. The heart of our class is under the course materials tab here. Okay, here you can see what will be the kind of the workplace of our class. This is where you're going to find all the assignments that you're going to then do on your own time. This is where I'm posting them. You can see a series of assignments that we have initially. This is the video that you're watching right now. If you wanted to see it again, it's here. This is where there'll be introductions. One of the tasks you'll have will be to introduce yourself to other members of the class and to me. And then the next assignment is the syllabus quiz. I also draw your attention to the various units. Okay, as I mentioned, there are 8 units for this class. As you get to a unit, all right, you can get to a unit anytime. So let's say you finish something early, you can go ahead, as long as it's posted, and start the next unit. Don't worry about waiting for anything. It's just if you have the stamina, you can keep going on it. I should just let you know that I will be posting the units about a week in advance, okay? Maybe, the beginning of the class, it might not be quite a full week, but I'll be trying to post everything a week in advance so you'll have that material. When you're looking at it, you'll click on this, and inside will be all this information, all right, that you can see. I don't have it in there now, so I'm not going to click on it. The next thing to note is you have a series of instructions here underneath the unit. This is what also appears in the syllabus under your assignments and requirements for the weekly schedule. All right, so I've just replicated it here. So you have the weekly schedule to see what needs to be done, and it's also on Blackboard. So whichever you feel more comfortable with, note they're in both places. So if you have a question about deadlines, make sure you look through this because chances are it's already up here. I'll just give you a sense. This is a fairly typical example. Follow the instructions and read this first document. This is a document that's going to have a series of things, from a video potentially to a PowerPoint presentation that you need to watch. It tells you which page, which text to actually read, how many pages. And then it tells you when to complete the Poe quiz, for example, because this is our first text. We're looking at Edgar Allan Poe. And then the next day you'll be asked to complete the Poe discussion board. Now, the discussion board posts, you'll find out, are about a page in length. So these are pretty substantial. Okay? This basically stands in for all of your class discussion. So that's why they're so important. You'll also see that they're 40% of your grade. In fact, the discussion posts and response to the discussion posts weigh the most of any assignment in the entire class. The other element is that you need to respond to at least 2 other posts, okay? You get a point for each time you respond to another post, okay? Up to 2, okay? Feel free to respond to more if you want, if you see somebody's post and find it interesting, but you do get credit for up to 2. Okay, and here you can see the first 3 units being kind of mapped out for you. And this is to give you a sense, basically a week and a half of class, even less than that. All right. Next, let's look at where we'll be having our discussions. This is a discussion board. You'll see here I've already put down my own introduction for you. And this is a thing to read. I'll be sending it to you as well. This is a thing for you to read and to follow the directions for how to do your own discussion board posting. After you read this, what you'll then do is click on this, and then you hit Create Thread. You put your subject, which will be different for each discussion board post. It could be Poe, could be introducing myself, etc. And this is where you'll put the text of your post, just so you know. Okay. Other things to look into, this is where you will be able to find your grades. I'll be posting all your grades in Blackboard. And there are library resources here, which you may or may not be familiar with. This is a great portal. Just go directly to the library. That's Blackboard. And if you have any questions about Blackboard, you can hit Blackboard Help, and a series of responses can help. You can also just Google it, whichever is easier. Okay, now that's some of the basics of our home page. If you have any other specific questions, feel free to let me know. Oh, one last point. I should have gone over this beforehand. In the discussion board area, there are 2 other fora. Okay, these forums will exist over the entire semester. They're the Q&A forum and the Cyber Cafe. These are explained much more thoroughly in the syllabus, but just to give you some basics, the Q&A formula is for any questions you might have about the class and that might be of interest to your students, other students, I'm sorry, to your colleagues. And this is something that works just like any other discussion board. You put it up there, and then I respond, or potentially another student can respond, okay? But this is a place where everybody can see where things are going on. The other is the Cyber Cafe. This is a great place that if you wanted to have a conversation with your fellow students, you could kind of put some ideas out there and get feedback from them. I won't enter the Cyber Cafe unless somebody asks me to. So this is really, if you wanted to have a conversation with your fellow students, this would be the place to do it. It's already set up for you to do so, okay? Because there is no other way to really connect with students because you don't see them in a class, the Cyber Cafe is a good resource for that. Now let's move to Turnitin, okay? To get to Turnitin, information's on the syllabus. You go to Turnitin.com. You'll come to a login address like this, and this is where you'll put in your email address and your login. Okay. On the syllabus, it'll explain how you enroll in the class, and the class will have a, excuse me, a course number and an enrollment key. Don't freak out about enrollment key. That's just a password, okay? And it's all outlined in the syllabus. Once you're enrolled in the class, you can get into the class like this, and you'll see what the assignments are. I've created something called Try Out Turnitin. This basically will allow you to try out Turnitin if you've never done it before. If you've done it, don't worry about it. Ignore it entirely. But this is a good place to practice submitting a paper so that when it comes time for an actual deadline, you're not missing that deadline because you're having trouble with Turnitin. So if you're new to Turnitin, really play with this, try out Turnitin beforehand so that you can be ensured that your paper gets in on time. You'll also see this is where the other two major writing assignments. You don't have to submit your discussion board posts to turn it in, but your 2 to 3 page essay and your final research paper of 5 to 7 pages, all of this is outlined in the syllabus. These will go on the Turnitin. Okay, so this is really all you need to know about Turnitin. All right, you see how you just hit submit and just follow the directions from there. It's very, very intuitive. You should have no trouble. A key thing about Turnitin, this is something that I'll explain further when we get to that point, is you need to get an email receipt indicating that your paper has been submitted. If you have not, you've probably had trouble. So, 2 suggestions. You really should give yourself 10 minutes to submit your paper on Turnitin. So if the deadline is 11 p.m., I would make sure that around 10:45, I'm trying to submit my paper on Turnitin so that I can make sure it gets done on time. All right. If you do not get an email receipt, your paper did not upload. All right. I know this technology very well. It doesn't collapse that often. That's one of the reasons why I've separated it from Blackboard. It doesn't malfunction like most other of the programs you're used to using. So if you've failed to submit something on Turnitin, chances are it's your own fault and not the technology's fault. So be mindful of that if you're trying to use this for an excuse. In other words, don't use it as an excuse. Okay, hopefully that brief sojourn into Blackboard and to Turnitin was not too boring. If you were familiar with them, I'm sorry. That was probably very, very boring. In any event, I want to wish you good luck. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me at jnarkunis@jj.cuny.edu. I also, just in closing, want to kind of make you aware of some important dates that are coming up very quickly. One of which is actually today. If for whatever reason this class is not for you, you should drop the class for a full refund by 11:59 tonight. Okay, just to be aware of that. Another bit of information, the last day to add or swap classes is July 17th. The last day to drop for 50% refund is July 19th. And the last day to choose a pass-fail option is July 19th. Last day to drop for 25% refund is July 21st. And our grades have to be submitted on August 20th. Okay, so that's, the grade submission is for me, but it just gives you a sense of how compressed this class is. Also, will give you a sense of, just let you know, I give you a few extra days for the final research paper after the semester ends on the 16th, making my life quite difficult, but nevertheless giving you some extra time. In any event, thank you, and I hope this has not been too boring, and I look forward to our semester, and I hope you will as well. Take care.